Hello, here we are, Green Umbrella's live lunch, Thursday, 12 o'clock. We are here on the Green Umbrella Facebook page, Green Umbrella YouTube channel, and also on my LinkedIn account as well, all being well. Sometimes that doesn't always work the way it should, but fingers crossed we're there today. So the idea of this show is we kind of just have a bit of a catch up and we let the world know what's going on whilst we do that, and maybe talk about some of what's been happening in the social media world this week and digital marketing and the trends and the changes and the updates and all that sort of stuff. So I just went to put my hair behind my ear and it's the other side, sorry. You know when you're on StreamYard, so we use StreamYard to multi-stream this. And the problem is when you're looking at it, it's like the mirroring is different on this to what it is on everything else. So you see yourself how the world sees you, which is a little bit disconcerting. But there we go. So that's a long-winded way of me explaining why I didn't know my left from my right at that point. Anyway, how are you guys? How's everyone getting on this week?
Yeah, good.
Good.
Okay, not too shabby.
It's been a bit of a, feels like a slow news week this week. I think part of the problem is that my reading has really mounted up. So I'm looking forward to what you guys have picked up, because there might be a few things that I've not seen yet. But for me, Monday started off fantastically because Mark and Jane were back in the office.
Yep.
Do you know, do you feel more productive working from home?
Some days.
Sometimes, but then I think it felt just as normal to be back in the office.
I just felt, come the end of the day on Monday, I just felt like I'd got through so much more, even though I hadn't really. But I think those little breaks that you end up having with each other when you're getting up to no good, let's say, you know, the little office shenanigans that go on.
COVID safe office shenanigans.
COVID safe office shenanigans. You know, a little bit of workplace bullying doesn't hurt anybody, does it?
Especially when they're not there.
Yeah, hopefully no one in HR is watching this. Yeah. But no, I just felt it made such a difference having the two of you in and working that way. But one of the things that I think was really funny is that it made me realise the little things we do when we're working in a working environment together that just make us feel more kind of business ready that we might not have done working from home. So silly things like, I think it was the first time I'd used my perfume since we went into lockdown, my work perfume, and stuff like that. But it was really good to have you guys back in. Anyway, on that note, we've had some comments in already. So we've had a question which we will definitely come to about audio, social audio. So it's definitely something we want to talk about today. But I've also had some really helpful comments, like Chris Lambert say, you know, on Monday I had someone else there to make me coffee. Yes, we all know I don't make coffee in the office. I did try. I think I did kind of I 90% of the way made coffee for Jane on Monday. But there we go. Anyway, on that note, Amanda, let's come to you. So for those of you that don't know, Amanda is actually based on the South Coast in Southampton. So her coming into the office isn't an everyday occurrence anyway. We didn't just leave her out on Monday intentionally. But since you haven't...
With NFI. No, that's not true. You're absolutely right. I live a good couple of hours away. So when I come up, pre-COVID times, we'd make a full couple of days of it, kind of catch up on everything, strategy stuff, wouldn't we? And then haven't seen you guys in the flesh for ages. So hopefully we can get that back in. But yeah, I'm quite envious of you being back in the office this week.
Yeah,
feels like a good bit of normality coming back.
Good. So you are you're just like me when it comes to trying to stay on top of all the research stuff that comes out. Has there been anything that's sort of come across your desk this week in terms of social media news that you think's worth a share?
Yeah, definitely. And you're right. I have a pile of things that I have to read, and I'm a real real one for kind of getting an email and going, oh, I'll save that and read it later. And now I have kind of almost an inbox of its own to read. But yeah, a couple of things grabbed my attention. So there was a report out from Sprout Social. So if people don't know who they are, that's generally a platform that people can use to schedule their social media. We don't use it particularly heavily, or much at all really, at Green Umbrella. We tend to use eClincher, just fits better for our business. But they release their best times to post on social media. So, and a lot of these reports often fly around, and sometimes you get a report straight from something like Facebook itself, but they tend to look at when people are mostly in the platform. So when they are, somebody's in there and active. Whereas this Sprout Social one was based purely on when posts get the most engagement. So it was looking at the best time to post to actually get some engagement on your content that's going out there. And I can put a link for it in the comments. I've just shared it on my LinkedIn actually. And really for all the platforms, so it covered Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. It showed that it was middle of the day and during the week. So basically about now. So I suppose case in point, if somebody's listening to this or watching this live, then it is kind of case in point. You're there and you're engaged in what you're doing. So for Facebook, it was quite a broad time frame. So it was pretty much most weekdays, apart from Thursday. I'm not entirely sure why that is. So maybe we should take note of that. We do live lunch on a Thursday. Typically, it was Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and quite a broad range between 9 and 2. So yeah, really core part of the day. For Instagram, it was a little bit narrower. So it was really that lunchtime section between 11 and 1. But I just thought that was quite interesting. Maybe it's to do with the fact that businesses don't always post so much on a weekend. So it could be kind of slightly skewed data because it's showing there's more engagement. But is that because there's less posts, certainly from businesses? And as always, I think, as we always say to our audiences, look at your own analytics, because that's kind of a global data of when people are posting things. If you wanted it specifically for B2B or B2C, or in your really specific sector, it will vary. So look at your own. But yeah, I just thought that was quite interesting. So I put it on my LinkedIn, and I was curious to see how much interaction it would get and what time of day people are reading it.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting when we see this data, because it does very much vary kind of sector to sector. Just think, if you're B2B or B2C, if you're B2B, there's generally, I'd say there's very, very few B2B businesses that we've worked with over the last however many years it is now, where posting on a Saturday works. However, B2Cs, definitely Saturdays are great, especially in the summer. So, it's, if you've got an audience, there's definitely kind of like a Facebook, Instagram audience as well. The weekends can work really well, but you need to understand your ideal client, your avatar, your persona. You need to understand them at such a degree that you can kind of predict their behavior. I remember sitting with a client and going through all their sort of Facebook analytics at one point, and we could see, like, at the weekend, they were very much a B2C brand, very much sort of targeting the stay-at-home parents kind of thing. And you could actually see this kind of behavior where, little Jimmy's gone for his like football club or rugby on the Saturday morning, and you could see on the Sunday afternoon, everything kind of like dips off at the point where everyone's had their Sunday lunch, they've gone for a bit of an afternoon snooze. And, you could kind of like you could see the way people's days went. You could see that peak in the morning, the school drop off. And like they would have loads of people online in their audience from about 2:15 up until 3:00, and then it would all drop off again. So actually, because we understood that behaviour, and we could look at all the guidance, the research that's there, but then look much closer at home at that data. Then when we put some adverts together, we were able to kind of use those two data sets and produce some adverts that really worked well. Because it was kind of product based, We had some awareness ads that kind of ran across all of the key times. Then as we got further down the funnel, when we were doing the adverts that were very much, buy my stuff now, right at the neck of the funnel there, we made sure that those were being scheduled to run at a point where that parent would be sat in their car waiting for the school to let the kids out. And, they're kind of sitting there just waiting, and therefore most likely to be scrolling through their phones, taking them through to landing pages that we know worked really, really well on mobile, and all of that sort of stuff. And like the results were fantastic. Now, if we'd have just run the same content, run the same adverts, and just kind of like blasted it and hadn't looked at the behaviors in that way, 100% that campaign wouldn't have been as successful. So it's really important we do consider sort of the timestamps, if you like. I mean, we almost never post on a Saturday ourselves because we're B2B. Fridays, I'd say Fridays after 12 o'clock. I don't really we don't really encourage people posting, certainly after 3 o'clock on a Friday. If you've got a strong business message that needs to be shared, it's better to wait for Monday lunchtime before you post that. So it is all really interesting things. Was there anything in it, Amanda, that kind of surprised you?
The day of the week I thought was a bit of an anomaly. So, why some days over others? Why a Tuesday over a Thursday? I don't, it doesn't feel like there's much logic there. But yeah, and it just, well, hang on, surely we're all supposed to, well, not all of us, but a lot of people work during the day. Are we really on Instagram and Facebook and engaging with stuff? Sometimes we might have a cheeky scroll while we're waiting for the kettle to boil, but if you're actually kind of liking or reacting to something and you're doing it in those core times. So yeah, I don't know. I just was a bit kind of, are people, well, yeah, maybe they're on Thursday lunchtime, they're watching us, but surely that should boost the numbers for engagement. So I don't know. So it didn't surprise me hugely because I've seen a lot of this data in the past, and particularly recently. So, in the last 18 months, if you'd taken this prior to lockdown, LinkedIn, for example, commute time was often a really prime time for engagement. So people were sort of thinking about work, they might be going on LinkedIn, or they might be coming home from it, they might be looking for a job if they've had a really rubbishy day. So those kind of commute times were often quite a peak for engagement. But obviously now so few people are commuting, that might change again. So if you did this in another 6 months, if people are coming back on trains, back on buses, it might shift a bit. But for now, and bear in mind this data is going to be looking retrospectively at, previous, I'm not sure the time frame it was covering, but it would be previous kind of, let's say, 6 months. So yeah, I would expect it to shift slightly over the coming 6 months or a year, but for now it wasn't a huge surprise, to be honest.
Yeah, there is always a bit of seasonality to this as well. Definitely, without a doubt, there's always seasonality in there, and yeah, it's interesting, definitely very interesting. Anything else that you spotted this week or that you think we should be talking about?
Just a nod to, and it's probably not the sexiest subject in the world, but just a nod to the privacy policies and changes, because they've been in the news quite a lot this week. So WhatsApp, for example, they made some changes to their privacy policy, which they tried to kind of force people to accept. And what it kind of said was, well, you can still use WhatsApp if you don't accept our new terms, but we're just going to sort of start to disable things. So in effect, it was making it impossible to use. They had some pushback on it. So now they're kind of gradually putting this change through. But it's been really poorly received. I think a lot of people are kind of going, well, hang on a minute, you're trying to kind of capture my data. You'll be able to read my messages. And it's not about that. It's just about how it will make it easier for you to communicate with businesses, potentially through WhatsApp. So people might have noticed that you can, if you're using social channels, you can use things like Facebook Messenger. You can get text updates. You can get updates on orders, tracking things, engaging with them if you've got a problem. They're just, a lot of these businesses are moving to WhatsApp now, because obviously it's linked to Facebook, but because we're all a little bit scared as consumers of how our data is used, there's a lot of reticence. And I've noticed a few people just in my personal network have done one of those things, those posts on Facebook that kind of says, like, look out everyone, they're after your data, so you need to go into settings and press this button. And you kind of look at it and you go, that's not how it works. They're not trying to steal your data like that. They're trying to make it easier. But so yeah, it's kind of gained legs and gained momentum in the news in not the best way. So I don't know, maybe I'm being too empathetic. I feel a bit sorry for WhatsApp because they're just trying to kind of make the life easier for people. But yeah, there's been a real pushback on it.
I think there is a little bit of a lesson in messaging as well. So when they tried to release these updates earlier in the year, and they just did it. It was poorly executed, and so they kind of went, "Don't worry, folks, we're not going to do it after all." Yeah, and they kind of took it back. And essentially, what they've done is they haven't changed anything. They're just rolling out exactly the same stuff again, but they've just tried to do it a bit sneaky. They've been a bit sneakier, tried to do it a bit quieter.
Yeah.
And so
on
actually, the download. On the download, you're so cool. That's probably the only time I've ever said that, Amanda. But yeah, it's, and so actually people have kind of got a whiff, and it's like, well, actually this is the same as what you did before, and nobody liked it then. And so I think it is whenever you have a change that you're making, you need to really manage the communication on that. And a lot of the time people think about, okay, how do we manage change internally and deal with comms that way? And they're looking at their like internal marketing, if you like. But in this situation, it's kind of the same thing, but externally. And I think we have to be really careful sometimes if you're communicating major change, actually how you do that while still maintaining loyalty. And it's this, we think about sales funnels and that kind of stuff. And I know Amanda's going, oh, she's talking about funnels again. But actually, how aware did WhatsApp, okay, obviously WhatsApp's owned by Facebook, but how aware did they make us of the problem that they were going to be fixing these updates? They didn't, because if they'd done that successfully, people would welcome the changes. So I think there's a bit of a lesson in it as well.
Yep, I would say so.
Cool. Awesome. So Jane, I will come to you next. I'll pick you.
So my thing's not really social media, but it's e-commerce is something that I've talked about quite a few times. But recently, Google have come together with Shopify in a new partnership, basically to allow people to sell things more easily, which is what's been happening everywhere, isn't it? So we've seen it across all the social platforms. So now if you're a Shopify merchant, you can more easily list your products so that they show up in people's Google searches. And they've got this new AI tool called the shopping graph, which basically is scanning everything all of the time, so that the minute you put something on your shop, it's available when someone searches on Google almost in real time. So the idea is just to make everything just so much easier for people to actually do. And then the other thing that they've also about to introduce is a better search thing for images. So if you see a picture of, say, a celebrity or something wearing some nice trainers, you can screenshot that, upload it into Google. You can then tell Google to search within the image. It will highlight whatever it can find in there. So hopefully we'll pick up on the trainers, and then we'll show you shopping results for those trainers. So it's just another way of sort of helping small businesses and merchants and anybody that wants to sell something to do it a lot quicker, a lot easier, less clicks, easier for the consumer. And it's just quite interesting to see that, Google are jumping on it as well, because obviously all the social platforms have done similar things recently.
So Mark, have you got any thoughts on that? Like what effect is that going to have on sort of smaller businesses with e-commerce sites? Do you think, like, how quickly do these changes get picked up by you know, the WooCommerces, the Shopifys, the, you know, all that sort of stuff. When it's things that are sort of affecting the graph bit, if you like. So the graph stuff's like the back end techie stuff that I don't need to know. I don't need to worry about. That's your business. You talk.
Hey, no. I'm front end design. I would imagine, obviously, you know, the developers of obviously plugins and sort of frameworks are obviously in the loop with things that are coming through. So you would like to think that they're obviously developing, you know, pretty much in parallel to things that are coming up, you know, on the major sort of platforms. So I'd imagine it takes a few months for things to trickle through, but you'd like to think that they'll be sort of implementing changes there anyway.
I'm just commenting on LinkedIn, so I might.
You can hide that, the fact that you were distracted there. But at least because you're replying to comments from people listening and people who've asked questions, you're not just kind of, you're not scrolling on Facebook, you know.
Yeah, that's where all the engagement's coming from. Christina's on Instagram at the minute.
I did say in last week's show, I really struggle when there's like lots going on different screens, so I do apologise. But it's an interesting change, and it's obviously personally, I don't get involved with the e-commerce stuff so much. We do have clients that are e-commerce, and sort of Mark tends to deal with them more from a web perspective, and Jane and Emily have got involved with those more so from a sort of, you know, running the social profiles, running adverts, that sort of stuff. But I do think that over the last year, as there's been this, you know, this whole shift to everyone, you know, how do we make online seamless, and, you know, the social profiles, social platforms rather, trying to create a seamless shopping experience, all that kind of stuff. Just feel a little bit like a Google late to the party in doing this?
Possibly, yeah.
Or is it just actually it's got to a place now where everyone else has caught up with Google and they're like, okay, well, let's do the next thing now?
Surprising, because normally Google are not late to the party, are they? Let's face it, they're normally kind of there trying to push things through as quickly as they can.
Yeah, I mean, the shopping from an image thing, Pinterest have done that already with their Pinterest lens thing. So Google have second on that one, certainly.
Yeah, and you wouldn't generally class Pinterest as being at the forefront of anything. I mean, I know it's still a popular platform and used for things like design, consumer goods, fashion, brands, that kind of thing. But if you were talking about, okay, what brands have we got out there that are, you know, paving the way or kind of blazing a trail over how we kind of behave, you wouldn't put Pinterest there. But I think that what they do well is they know their market and they know what people want. So whilst they might not be the biggest platform, the people that are on there are probably incredibly loyal, you know, and that's their platform of choice. That's where they go because it works for them.
Absolutely. Cool. Okay, so there's a couple of things I want to talk about, and one of them I know will make Mark tut because he's not interested. So shall I do that one first? So social audio, Clubhouse, woohoo! Love a bit of Clubhouse, me. So here's the thing, right? Everyone and their auntie is producing some form of social audio now. It's all in the pipeline. Even LinkedIn, which is, you know, always years behind everyone else, even they're working on it. And we've had this stuff with Clubhouse where, like, Q1, like the downloads were just crazy. The valuations that they got, the offer, I think it was Twitter tried to buy them and they refused, and the valuation was crazy. And then we kind of get to April, May, and it's like those downloads have just hit the deck. And it's because, you know, basically this kind of iOS only thing, people got a bit bored of that. You know, sometimes it's like, you know, it's the cool thing and everyone wants to be in the club, and then actually people are bored of hearing about it and they're not that interested anymore. It's like that film that's a blockbuster, everyone's talking about it, and then actually it, you know, it's like you kind of feel like you don't want to see it in case it's a disappointment. or yeah, I know it's really good, I'll get round to it eventually. And I think that's perhaps what's happened with Clubhouse. I haven't seen any data in terms of the downloads over the last week yet. So basically, a couple of weeks ago, they said that they were testing it on Android. They were then releasing it on Android. And I think literally Thursday, roughly about this time of day, they started to release Clubhouse on Android in the UK. And like the proper announcement had sort of come out by the Friday morning. And I just don't feel like there's been a sudden increase of people on the platform. As a user, I kind of thought, okay, look, right, there's going to be an influx now, and I just haven't seen it. Now, that might be because of the rooms that I'm hanging out in on the platform, but I just don't know if it's kind of people that want to get into social audio, if they're now actually just waiting for it to appear on their platform of choice. So as we started, we got a question in. So yeah, here we go. So do we know when LinkedIn is being released, when sort of the LinkedIn audio version is being released? I don't have anything I can rely on to say when they're planning to do that. Will it benefit small business? 100% yes. Okay. The thing with Clubhouse is that if you don't know your stuff, because it's a natural conversation and it's in the moment, if you don't know your stuff and you can't answer something, you're buggered. If you try and blag something, you're screwed. Because people can, like now, if I didn't know what I was talking about, I could talk and I could behave in a way, you can kind of like, my body language, everything together communicates confidence in what I'm saying. If you strip things away, if all you're left with is my voice and I don't really know what I'm talking about, then actually naturally you start to hear the little pauses and the ums and the ers and the gaps. And I think it's really hard for people to blag it on social audio. Okay. When it comes to a networking perspective, if a conversation is going on and you're the person speaking, people are listening to you. Social audio isn't a conversation where everyone butts in and talks over everyone else. There's all these, what's the word when everyone's being polite to each other? Can't think what the word is, because I don't do it very much. But it's I can't think of the word, and it's really annoying me.
Well, when everyone's being sort of all gracious, and
that's it. Yeah. So like you're not talking, so you're muted. So you unmute before you speak, and these little things that happen. You don't get a round of applause. People flash their mics and stuff like that. And so actually, it's like now I talk over everyone. And sometimes you guys, when you're brave enough, you might talk over me. But it just doesn't happen that way because you don't get those cues. It's like being on the telephone. Has that person finished speaking? And then you speak. Or you go to speak and they're still talking and you stop again. You kind of get that going on. So actually, when you are proving your expertise, you really have got a platform to talk from. And I think this is where the benefit is. The other thing as well is the people that are going to tune in to that conversation are motivated either because they want to know what that individual is talking about, or they're motivated because they're really interested in the topic of conversation. So again, as a small business, if you want to get in front of the right people and you understand who it is you're trying to reach, you understand what their problems are, what's kind of like what's the thing that's on their list that they need to do the research on, and you're talking about those things, you're going to get in front of the right people. It's very much driven by individuals. So social audio very much ties into personal brand rather than company brand. And when it comes to bigger organizations, more corporate organizations, there's a lot of rules in place. They're far more fearful of what someone might say and, out of context and that kind of thing. So again, as a small business, kind of got a bit more freedom to speak as well. So I think social audio is massive for small business. That's my personal opinion. My personal experience is that I've been able to talk to people I never would have discovered if it hadn't been for social audio. And it really speeds up that feeling of, I know that person as well. So in terms of building relationships, I think it's a fantastic tool. I've had a few times now where someone's actually, shall we set up a call, or shall we just jump into like a private audio chat? Because you can like set up private rooms as well. So, rather than having to book a meeting, or, you switch from that to a phone call, it's like, actually, let's just go and talk there, which I think is also quite interesting. Whether that will continue or not, I'm not sure. But yeah, etiquette, that's the word, Paul, etiquette. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, etiquette, that's not something I've really got a lot of, is it? But there we go. So, okay, so the thing with social audio is that it's not just going to be on Clubhouse, it is going to be elsewhere. So if you're really focused on where your audience is going to be, then actually just wait for it to appear there, I think is the answer. Clubhouse at the minute, the algorithm isn't fantastic in terms of what it suggests to you to be listening into. You have to kind of really teach it by like looking at who you follow, so that it serves things in your hallway, in your feed. But I just think it's got fantastic opportunities for all of us. Now, I know I'm really into it, and essentially you guys are not. So what do you reckon? Let's have the conversation.
I think I just prefer consuming information when I want to, not having to be. It's almost that live thing and having to be there. So if I wanted to go and find out something, I'd go to YouTube. I wouldn't be wanting to go into a room to listen to it.
I think there's something in the way that the rooms are marketed is really, really important. So if you're just doing a general room let's say I was just doing a room on LinkedIn generation, there are so many LinkedIn generation rooms that you can kind of, lead generation rooms that you can jump into, that actually there's nothing really unique about that. Whereas, because stuff tends to not be recorded, okay, if you want to record your Clubhouse, you're supposed to say that it's being recorded. The whole idea of it is it's in the moment, it's content that you will miss. So I think it needs to be event-driven to really succeed. For example, like, was it 2 weeks ago, there was the rugby draw announcement?
The announcement, yeah, that we were listening to, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So what if that was in a Clubhouse room, and actually you've got the ability, whilst you're listening along, you've got the ability to be, up on stage, to ask questions there and then, to engage in that conversation.
I think I'd still be a bit reluctant, just because I don't want to hear Joe Public asking a question about it, because it's kind of like, sometimes when you go onto social media and you always think, don't read the comments, because most of the comments are from, opinionated what's it. So you kind of think, I want to hear and see the professionals, or the the influencer, or the whoever it might be, sports person, celebrity, whatever.
So I think there's developments that they can make, definitely, in terms of being able to field questions almost. So let's say, for example, we announced that there was going to be this event. It was happening on Clubhouse. You could submit your questions. Those could be sort of vetted, if you like. Then rather than it be the reporters asking the questions, Amanda, Mark, you've both submitted a question. You've had something back to say, yeah, we're going to include you as part of the panel, so you can ask your question. I think there's ways of managing that. Essentially, it's not a free for all. It's anyone can put their hand up, but the moderator of the room still needs to give them the opportunity to come onto the stage, so to speak. So if you've got someone that puts their hand up that we're live streaming, so trying to think of a word that won't get me in trouble.
Difficult. Someone who's difficult.
Yeah. You can kind of go, no. So yeah, you can also, as the moderator, you can invite people up on stage as well. So you do have that sort of element of control to be able to, control the quality of the room and the conversation and the panel. But I just think it has so much to offer. It's almost kind of, it's out there before it's been perfected. And I think some of the other platforms holding back on it, I think part of that is, let's see what the mistakes are so that we can do better when we release ours. I know like Twitter Spaces is already been released. There's been all sorts of updates on that already in terms of like user experience and that kind of thing, but they're just not getting people using it on there at the minute. There's only really 1 or 2 people that I follow that are using Twitter Spaces at the moment. Jane, I don't know if you tuned, because I know one of those people, Matt Navarra, who's like the big name in the social media world, he does something on a Friday afternoon in Twitter Spaces. So if you don't want to look at Clubhouse, but you want to understand the experience a little bit more, tune into that perhaps. But Jane, have you looked at that at all?
Only once for his. I had a quick listen into it. Anyway, it was quite interesting, but it's not that dissimilar. Or at the time I listened, it wasn't that dissimilar to Clubhouse. It was a couple of months back now. Yeah.
So yeah, there's, like I said, there's been a couple of comments. So Russell on LinkedIn has sort of said, where's it gone? Has it been the beneficiary of FOMO? And then people have found out there's nothing to miss there. Chris has said, he's logged in a few times and he can't see what the fuss is about. And I think this is the thing. It's become talked about so much that people are in there and they're kind of like, well, what am I supposed to do now?
I think the benefit of having it on something like Twitter and LinkedIn, so Twitter Spaces, for example, I dived into one of those because I happened to be in the platform and it kind of pinged me a notification to say, this person has started a space. So again, it was a rugby one. So there's a guy called Mauro Itoji who's he's not only is he kind of leading England rugby player, he's quite proud of his Nigerian heritage. So he was kind of chairing a space that was talking about art and culture. But of course, I get the notification. It kind of says they're there and they're live. And because I was in the platform, I jumped in for 5 minutes. So, and if you turn off, you don't tend to go into Clubhouse for anything other than to join a room. So it's kind of a conscious decision to go into Clubhouse. So my sense is I think they will lose some audience to the social channels that catch up. I don't know how much of it is established enough, but yeah.
I do think it will go elsewhere. I feel a little bit. We saw a similar thing happen with Snapchat where it had an offer and it didn't take it. And then from that point, Snapchat's still around, definitely. But it's Snapchat's never going to be one of the most used social media platforms. And I think they've probably, to a certain extent, missed unless they suddenly do something massive, I think they've probably missed their opportunity now.
Yeah.
In terms of being like one of the top 3, and I kind of
sorry.
Go on, you go.
I was going to say I talked over you. Sorry.
And then I was
sometimes I don't think there's any logic to it either. So you kind of think, well, that's exactly the same as that. Why aren't we using it? So Facebook introduced rooms, didn't they, this time? Was it last year? I don't know if but it's about a year ago, to kind of compete with Zoom. And the fact that you could go in there, but it just hasn't taken off. Everyone is kind of stuck with Zoom, and now it's almost become a verb. Are we Zooming? It's kind of, are we Googling? Are we Zooming? People might use Teams, but they kind of still use Zoom as the verb for what they're doing. So, the platforms try and catch up, but it just doesn't take off for whatever reason. And as I said, sometimes there's just no logic to it. It's exactly the same functionality. It's just that one is used more than that one.
Absolutely. I feel like Clubhouse has missed its opportunity in terms of making it big from a commercial perspective. I think everything they've done to take the product to market has been very, very clever. They've just, I just kind of think, because it's every platform is looking to create their own version, and all it is live streaming minus the video. That's all it is. It's live streaming minus the video, and you don't record it. That's all it is. So, Paul said, how can I use Clubhouse for my business? In the same way you use live streaming. Okay. It's if you're in a business where you want to go international, I think Clubhouse has massive opportunities for you there, because you can then start to see actually who are the influencers in other territories. But for a local networking organization, that's not a use case. For me as an individual user, it's fantastic from an educational perspective. I get to listen in to some of the massive influencers from within the social media world that I wouldn't be listening to unless I was spending £3,000 or £4,000 attending a conference. So I think we're going to end up with like these niche placements, like Reddit, for example. Reddit's working on their audio version as well. So actually, there is, the IT tech community that exists within Reddit, and that doesn't really, they're active there. They don't tend to venture much out of that platform. They're not going to come to Clubhouse. They're going to use the audio version there. The B2B stuff that the people want to do networking and use social audio to do it, they're going to do it on LinkedIn. Why would they go to Clubhouse? And I think that's the way it's going to go. So, it's like with any of this stuff, if it works, if it's any good, it either gets bought by one of the big players, or it gets recreated by them. And in this case, it's definitely the recreation.
Do you know what annoys me about Clubhouse actually as well is the fact it's still invite only, and I think that now's the time to get rid of that. If you want people to use it, why not just let them all in? The
thing is, it's invite only, but it's like it's the worst. It's like the nightclub where you've got to be a member, but everyone can just walk in through the back door. It's like this whole thing of it being a you've got to be in it to be in it is just gone. It's just gone. And I think that's another reason why all those downloads have really slowed. That said, like I said, I haven't seen the figures for the last week. And I think May's download figures will be interesting because it's supposed to be released to all territories by the end of the month. So we will see. Okay, I've got one other thing to talk about, but we're kind of 1:45. So I'll talk about it really quickly and just get your thoughts on it. So that is the fact that a couple of weeks ago, LinkedIn sort of quietly introduced a cap, or actually it's about 4 weeks ago now, we started to hear about this. Going forward, you'll only be able to invite a maximum of 100 new connections on LinkedIn. So this is connection requests. It's not that you can only grow by 100. There are some people in some businesses that are really going to struggle because of this, because they're kind of they're looking at numbers. They're trying to increase their networks massively, or anyone that's sort of new to LinkedIn trying to establish a network. I think it's going to be a real pain in the backside. But what do you guys think? Do you think it's something that like, how would you get around it? Do you think it's a frustration? Do you think it's like it's actually not anything to worry about? I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it.
Is there a time frame? So you're allowed to invite 100 connections
Per week.
per week.
So
Yeah.
you can send 100 connection requests each week. So yeah.
I mean, I don't think it was, certainly won't impact me. It won't impact anyone I'm particularly working with. If they were sending out more than 100 connection requests a week, I mean, surely that's just spam. It just, you know,
and that's why they've done it. That's why they've done it.
So, I think it's a good move. It's going to get rid of those people that are just literally trying to connect with, you know, fake profiles. So if they're kind of bots or fake profiles, it will, you know, put a stop to that. So yeah, I think it's a smart move. I think it's and if they make some noise about it and communicate it correctly, it's kind of a, hey, you know, one of those annoying things that you don't like about us, that's not happening anymore. So
yeah. I mean, basically, the reason for it is to stop people using things like LinkedIn Helper, Octopus CRM. DuckSoup is a tool that we suggest people make use of, but only a certain part of it. There's a bit within DuckSoup that will automate connection requests, and I'm like anti that. Don't use that bit. And the thing is, it's like this stuff that we shouldn't have been doing anyway, that is against LinkedIn's sort of user agreement. It's in place to make it harder, well, to eradicate, make it harder for people to do that stuff. So I actually think it's quite a positive move. But I understand how some people are going like, what the hell am I supposed to do now? And the reality is, you know, people are like, oh, you know, should I pay for a premium account on LinkedIn or not? And my answer is always no, unless you're already maximizing the free option. So if you've maximized the free option, then you should upgrade. Now, if you upgrade to a premium account, the search functionality the additional search functionality that you have means that you can be far more specific with the people that you target. So actually, those 100 connection requests, instead of sending 100 a day and maybe only 10% of them are relevant, you could send 100 a week and send 100 relevant connection requests.
Yeah,
you
can't make meaningful connections with more than 100 people a week. You just can't.
So what's a meaningful connection? How do you make a meaningful connection on LinkedIn? Well,
I mean, we've all probably got people on our LinkedIn that we are connected to. And if someone said, oh, I can see, I can see, Christina at Green Umbrella. And someone might be like, yeah, but I don't know how, or I don't know where from. I don't know why I connected to her. So there could be people that you met years ago at a conference, and it was one interaction, and you might have had a meaningful interaction with them at the time, but now 5 years has gone by. So it's like, if you can't keep up with the connections you've got. If you're making 100 new connections a week, what's that? That's like 5,000 plus a year, isn't it? Doing the maths. It's just impossible to even come up with, even a vague, I think I met them at, or I connected with them because they're in the same industry as me. It's just impossible. And at the barest minimum, you kind of, need to think, well, why would I be connected to this person? It might be, well, I can see they work in marketing, so it's the same industry as me. I can see that we've got all these mutual connections, or they're a supplier to this industry which I work in. So at least if you can't quite remember, you can kind of deduce by what they do why you're connected to them. But yeah, I'm sorry. I just think there's no one can have that many connections that are meaningful and genuine.
What are your thoughts, Jane?
Kind of similar, really. I mean, I am connected to people and I have absolutely no clue where I've met them or anything else, to be honest. I don't know whether they sent me a request and I just accepted it or what. So I do know what you mean. And so, yeah, if I see their things come in my feed, I'm like, I don't know who you are. I don't know why I'm seeing this in my feed. I'm not going to comment on it. So, yeah, I'd kind of agree with Amanda, really, on that. And I don't send many requests anyway, so the 100 thing is not a problem for me at well.
I think this is the thing. If you're producing fantastic content that is directed at people you want to connect with, and you're engaging with other people, actually you're going to be receiving them at a rate where you don't have to send them beyond that anyway. I think there's some other strategies that you can really make use of now that we'll be rolling out with the clients where we manage their LinkedIn profiles. And I think there's some really good strategies that will actually be a massive benefit because of the limitation if we implement them quickly enough. And I also think that it's going to make LinkedIn more efficient. I almost wish I was like back in the early days again, with like less than 100 connections, working under this rule, because I actually think the quality of the network that individual would have will be much higher. Because when something's sparse, you're only going to use it when you really want to use it. So I think, going forward, every connection request you get, it's because someone really wants to connect with you rather than you're just another name in a search. So I do think from a lead generation perspective, LinkedIn is about to get more efficient.
Which is definitely a good move.
We'll see. Mark, you haven't talked much today. Shocker.
I know, just listening to a live broadcast.
Yeah. Without engaging.
Yeah.
Giving us full attention.
Yeah. Consuming.
That's it. Say nothing. Anything to add, or should we wrap it up there? Got anything you wanted to talk about today?
No.
All good. All right, then let's leave it there. So, like I said, not masses has happened this week, but probably some useful stuff in there for people. So, if you did find it useful, then just give us a little thumbs up or something so we know like you're there and alive. That would be fantastic. And we will see you next Thursday at 12. Comments are coming in. Hold on, let me look. Mark, you should join us on the chat. Yeah, Mark, you should be the guest next time.
No, I'd have to speak even more then.
Yeah. Okay, so 12 noon, we'll be hanging out for an hour. Come and join us. And if you ever fancy coming on as a guest, then let me know. Drop me a message on LinkedIn. It's probably the best place. And yeah, we'll see you all next week. Have an awesome week, everyone.
Bye.